Now let's talk about assignments in C++. Now, assignments are a type of executable statements in that they take some action. What is the action? The action is to give a value to a variable, right? So after declaring a variable, you can use an assignment to have it hold some value. What is the formal definition of an assignment? It looks as follows. There is a left-hand side and there's a right-hand side, and in the middle is this equal to symbol. On the left-hand side, you must have a variable identifier or the name of a variable. On the right-hand side can be an arbitrary expression. Now, at this point in the class, we will use an arithmetic expression, which can be as simple as a literal or an actual number like 42 or 3.14, or it can be an expression made up of literals combined with arithmetic operators such as plus and minus and multiply, divide, and so on. So let's take a look at some examples. Here is an assignment where tax is equal to multiplying two decimal numbers, or you can have a variable inside the expression in the right-hand side. That's perfectly okay. Now, the following expression where 5 equal to quantity, where quantity is another variable, is not okay. And why is that? And the reason is on the left-hand side, you do not have a variable identifier, which is a requirement. Right? Other types of assignments are having an expression with only variables on the right-hand side, or having an expression here with a variable that appears both on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. Both of those are perfectly fine. Now, you must give values to variables before you use them. So the variables must be initialized before they can be used. And you can do that right during declaration. You can have a declaration such as int counter equal to 5 that gives the initial value 5 to counter. Another format for doing this in C++ is to give that initial value within parentheses, like here. Similarly, you can initialize floating point or decimal numbers. So here you have a double, the variable name is pi, and you initialize to 3.14. Now, what happens if you use a variable before it's initialized? Well, the answer is it's unknown. It's unexpected. You might get unexpected results, right? So in this example, you have a variable we have declared called num, and we try to use it before we have actually assigned it any values. So it's unclear what num really holds here. Uh, the compiler might be nice and give num some default value like 0, uh, or num just might have whatever was in that space of memory when it was declared. So a good convention policy is to declare and initialize your values together, so that you get predictable results. Now let's talk about a couple of short form assignments that make it easier to specify assignments. So you might need to do something like this: increment a variable count by a particular value. This can be rewritten with an operator called plus equal to. It can be specified as count plus equal to 10. Now, this format is called an augmented assignment, and lets us express things more concisely. There are other operators such as minus equal to and multiply equal to, and so on. Here's another example. We're using multiply equal to in this format, and this is the same as the longer format. The other notation I want to talk about is when you need to increment or decrement a variable exactly by 1. So here's the example. You have num is equal to num plus 1. Now this can be rewritten as an augmented assignment that we talked about earlier as num plus equal to 1. But it can be made further concise by saying num plus plus, right? This is the same as num is equal to num plus 1. And this is called an auto increment. There's a similar notation called auto decrement, which will decrement this variable num by exactly 1. So short form notation for specifying assignments. Now, there's certain variables that you may not want to allow your program to change. These are things like for example, a tax rate or some scientific constant, right? You can tell the C++ compiler that a variable is a constant by using a const modifier in the declaration, like the one in below. So here you're declaring a double variable name is CA tax rate. You're giving an initial value here, right? But we've added this const modifier right at the beginning, right? So which tells the compiler, don't allow this variable to be changed. What you will get is a compile time error if the program tries to give this variable a value more than once. Okay. The other thing to note here is that the variable name that we chose here looks a bit different. It doesn't look like camel case. And by C++ convention, constants are written in all caps to distinguish them for other variables, right? And you use the underscore separator to separate the words. That is just a convention in C++ for constants.